Hello, people. I'm Sideshow Sam, and I'd like to apologize for the mediocre setup today. I don't have my fancy green screen because I'm testing out this for when I'm either feeling incredibly lazy or I'm very busy. In this case, it's the latter. It's coming up on finals week next week. So, let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons because that bounces around in my mind quite a lot. And what I've been thinking about recently is the fact that as the game master, the referee, the DM, you have ultimate control over the game. However, there are a lot of factors in modern players and dungeon masters' minds that kind of work against this idea. It is your game, you're in charge. And with this, I'll give the 5e Dungeon Master's Guide some credit. Now, if we look at page 4 in the 5e DM's Guide, Neil, to pardon me, I'm blind as a bat right now, and to quote, "The D&D rules help you and the other players have a good time, but the rules are not in charge. You're the DM, and you are in charge of the game. That said, your goal isn't to slaughter the adventurers, but to create a campaign world that revolves around their actions and decisions, and to keep your players coming back for more. If you're lucky, the events of your campaign will echo in the memories of your players long after the final game session has concluded." Now, let it be said, I disagree, and I've said this before with, the world revolving just around the players. I think the players should react to the world more, but that's a ramble for another time. In either case, that's good. Yes, you make the rules. You're the DM. However, it is well known that the 5th edition's Dungeon Master's Guide sucks, unless you're looking for magic items, and even then, online. And it looks like the 5.5 Dungeon Master's Guide is also going to not be great in regards to actually teaching or showing a new DM on how to deal with the more social aspects of the game. Because as the DM, you're in charge of the story, you're in charge of the adventure, but also you have to keep things moving along, and you have to kind of wrangle players sometimes. And you're going to have rules lawyers trying to tell you that, no, this is wrong. Here, let me go look it up. Aha, here's what the rule says. I can do this. You'll also have players who are, bullies to other players, and even bullies to you, trying to get their way, trying to do what they want, despite you abdicating, hey, no, you can't do that. So let's turn to what I believe to be a fine golden goose on how to actually play D&D. That being Advanced D&D. These are reprint copies. You can get them from DriveThruRPG. Fairly cheap. I'm not sponsored, but it's a pretty cool system. I like it a lot. There's some BS, but, it's in every system. So, as the DM, you are the final arbiter of the rules, and what you say goes. And the player's handbook, right at the beginning, reaffirms that. Upon page 2 of the AD&D Player's Handbook, there is a set of guidelines for a player to follow to make the game good. To make it work smoothly. And I like this a lot. So, if we look at number 2, cooperate with the Dungeon Master and respect his decisions. If you disagree, present your viewpoint with deference to his position as game moderator. Be prepared to accept his decision as final. And remember that not everything in the game will always go your way. This sets very good expectations. The Dungeon Master is in charge. If you disagree with him, talk to him, but ultimately he's the final arbiter of the situation, as he should be. And this is good because I've played in games, and I've even been this player where I expect everything to go my way just because I want it to. And that's not good. That doesn't work out. That doesn't make for an exciting game if everything always goes your way. And even then, if you come up with some sucky reason, like if a player is to say, alright, I go up and convince the guards that we're right and that they should let us go. Most players would expect the DM to just let them roll, and if they roll high enough, it works, but what? Goodness gracious, if you just slaughtered an orphanage, that's not gonna fucking work. Goodness, you tell me what you say, and then we'll see from there what happens. Hey, maybe I'll even give you a bonus to your roll if I think it's convincing, or, more than likely, in my playstyle and how I think it should be, If they have a decent charisma and they give like decent reason for things, yeah, sure. Well, listen, we brought you iron ore, so we think these weapons should be a little cheaper. That's fair, I'll knock a gold piece off. Oh, come on, can't you knock off 2? At that point, go, okay, roll for it with maybe a +1. Isn't that fantastic? Okay, and then going on to page 8, this continues. Rules not understood should have appropriate questions directed to the publisher. Disputes with the dungeon master are another matter entirely. The referee is the final arbiter of all affairs in his or her campaign. And that's all capitalized right there. Participants in a campaign have no recourse to the publisher, but they do have the ultimate recourse, since the most effective protest is withdrawal from the offending campaign. If you really don't like the DM, if it's not going your way, if it's not your type of game, just leave. Otherwise, if you like the game and the DM says something that you disagree with, after you bring it up with them, after you talk, respect their decision. It's their game. They've put in a lot of work. Goodness gracious, because going on here, ultimately, despite the fact that this is a game system created by someone else, the game's viability rests principally with the referee. The dungeon master must design and map out the dungeon, town, city, and world maps. He or she must populate the whole world and create its past history, and even devise some rationale for what transpired and probably will happen. As players, you must help immeasurably by participating, by letting the referee know that you appreciate his or her efforts, and by playing well and in a sportsmanly fashion. Good play inspires better creations to challenge that play. Be polite. Oh, goodness gracious. So moving on to the actual Advanced D&D DM's guide. This is a treasure trove in and of itself of just information. So, starting with the preface, on page 6, there's some very interesting information. And before I go on with this, just note that this is also mentioned a few times in the player's handbook. What follows herein is strictly for the eyes of you, the campaign referee, the creator and ultimate authority in your respective game. So, let's talk about this. The 5th edition book, the Player's Handbook, is all you need to play D&D. It has all the rules for essentially everything in it. Everything is essentially facing the players, mechanic-wise. I don't like this. Older editions of the game, the DM's Guide had the rules for basically everything. The Player's Handbooks just had guides on making characters and their spells. That's it. All the mechanics, all the deep stuff, traveling, jumping, running, etc., in this book, the DM's book. And that's great, because the players don't know the rules. You could either BS it, make up a ruling, whatever you like, and they'll go, oh, okay. So long as you keep it consistent and it's fair, that's great. That's fantastic. That's how it should be. Oh, goodness. The power rests with you, the referee, not the players in this regard. Here it is. So, players will want to know rules, though, right? And obviously, rolling to hit and all that is fine. Keep the combat tables to yourself, though. What you deem is good for the players to know, let them know. And they'll want to know more things. And you won't really want to just tell them that. How mechanics work in your game. Now, once again, page 8, there's some fantastic advice for giving those rules lawyers the information they want. As this book is the exclusive precinct of the DM, you must view any non-DM player possessing it as something less than worthy of an honorable death. Peeping players there will undoubtedly be, but they are simply lessening their own enjoyment of the game by taking away some of the sense of wonder that otherwise arises from a game which has rules hidden from the participants. It is in your interest and theirs to discourage possession of this book by players. If any of your participants do read herein, it is suggested that you assess them a heavy fee for consulting sages and other sources of information, not normally attainable by the inhabitants of your milieu, if they express knowledge which could only be garnered by consulting these pages. A magic item or two could be taken as payment. Insufficient, but perhaps it will tend to discourage such actions. So, I think that's very amusing, and I think that's a fine idea. It's very hard to do in 5e, but in older editions of the games, it's very manageable. Listen, keep the rules close to your chest. It's very hard to BS your way out of a situation while keeping the game going if the players know the rules and they're going to try to cite them. You should be honest generally and say, I don't know, but we're not looking that up right now. I'm going to make this ruling for now on how this works. After the game, look it up. Boom. Great. Or if you really don't like the rule that's in the book and the players are trying to press you for it, just say, yeah, no, you don't know. Here's how it works. Your system that you like, that's easier for you, that's better for your game, go with that. Ignore the rules lawyers and charge them a little fee for citing this otherworldly knowledge they seem to have about the game. I think that's an incredibly amusing and excellent way to deal with those sorts of players. Because, once again, remind them, I'm running the game. You're not. You're running your character. Please abide by my rulings at my table. Not to say you can't ask the players for advice, of course. Goodness, communication, once again, is key. Make sure everyone's having a good time, including you. Well, let's continue reading. Participants will always be pushing for a game which allows them to become strong and powerful far too quickly. Each will attempt to take the game out of your hands and mold it to his or her own ends. To satisfy this natural desire is to issue a death warrant to a campaign, for it will either be a one-player affair or the players will desert en masse for something more challenging and equitable. So, we've all, I'm sure, heard of games where one player becomes incredibly powerful and the entire game spirals out of control because of that. I've played characters like that. I've played with characters like that. It's amusing, but as it said, those games die very quickly because, well, what the hell do you do anymore? Once again, being fair, making rulings, and setting a pace of progression is really important, and it's very easy to do if you know the rules and the players don't know them completely. Now, let's discuss problem players and them sucking control and enjoyment of the game away from other players and perchance even yourself, the referee. Page 110 of the DM's Guide has some amusing anecdotes about this. Some players will find more enjoyment in spoiling a game rather than playing it, and this ruins the fun for the rest of the participants, so it must be prevented. Those who enjoy being loud and argumentative, those who pout or act in a childish manner when things go against them, those who use the books as a defense when you rule them out of line, should be excluded from the campaign. Simply put, ask them to leave, or do not invite them to participate again. Y'all problem players, sometimes there's nothing you can do about them. Sometimes they're irredeemable. Just please ask them to leave. Believe it or not, there are so many people who want to play tabletop RPGs. You just have to go out and ask. You'll be rejected sometimes, but there's always more players, dungeon masters, referees, GMs. Find them. Don't suffer an awful player at your table. I've had to kick 2 people out. Now, while I didn't enjoy doing both, it made the game a hell of a lot better. But going on here, it does give some advice for players that, you as the game master deem redeemable. Like, oh, this player has potential, but they're being a little unruly right now. We can save them. We can fix them. To begin, peer pressure is another means which can be used to control players who are not totally obnoxious and who you deem worthy of saving. These types typically attempt to give orders and instructions even when their characters are not present. Tell other characters what to do even though the character role they have has nothing to do with that of the one being instructed, or continually attempt actions or activities their characters would have no knowledge of. Well, when any such proposals or suggestions or orders are made, simply inform the group that is no longer possible under any circumstances because of the player in question. The group will then act to silence him or her and control undesirable outbursts. The other players will most certainly let such individuals know about the undesirable activity when it begins to affect their characters and their enjoyment of the game. Now, let it be said, I do condone peer pressure and bullying when it is necessary. However, generally, the people you're playing with are friends. This is a good tactic for randos, mind. But friends, generally just, saying at the table, hey man, it's not your turn. If you're not here, you can give advice, but don't tell them what to do. Just telling them straight up. If it's really awkward, you can take them away from the table and tell them that, but if you tell them at the table, most likely other people will agree with you and speak up. It's like what teachers say, there's no stupid questions, raise your hand and ask. Other people have the same questions as you. Other people are thinking the same thing at the table. And if you do it at the table real quick, like, hey man, just shut up when it's not your turn, it's his character. Other people will go, yeah. If it's randos, most likely the same thing will happen too. Don't be afraid to use some social manipulation. After all, that's most of your job as a DM, though it's worded much nicer. It's a group hallucination that you're facilitating. Goodness. But continuing on from there, there's even better advice that I like almost as much as peer pressure. Strong steps short of expulsion can be an extra random monster dice, obviously rolled. The attack of an ethereal mummy, which always strikes by surprise, naturally. Points of damage from blue bolts from the heavens, striking the offender's head. Or the permanent loss of a point of charisma, appropriately, from a character belonging to the offender. If these should have to be enacted regularly, then they are not effective, and stronger measures must be taken. Again, the ultimate answer to such a problem is to simply exclude the disruptive player from further gatherings. But these stronger measures are fantastic. Ethereal mummies appearing from extra random encounter rolls that strike that player by surprise is great. Or just having their character struck with blue bolts from the heavens whenever you're annoyed with them to show the god's displeasure. Or best of all, just saying, alright, due to you being annoying and commanding and trying to tell other people what to do, obviously your character is not... They don't have the level of charisma their character sheet says. Just subtract 1 from that. I guarantee if you just do that last one, that player will look at you in utter shock. Insist they lose that point of charisma. That is one of the funniest and perhaps greatest ways I've ever heard on controlling a problem player who just won't shut up. With all this advice in all of these books, there are warnings I'm not reading. Warnings that continually boil down to the fact that, listen, this is a social game. Talk to your players. They should respect your decisions, but talk things out, communicate. If there's a problem, solve it at the table real quick, keep going. This is a game about fun. If the rules impede that fun, if things are sucking up too much time, if someone's being annoying, hash it out with the rest of the players and get it fixed. Don't keep quiet, don't keep it to yourself. If you're a player watching this video and you're annoyed with something, bring it up at the table real quick at the beginning or end. And, oh goodness, if you're too shy to do that, bring it up with the DM, GM, referee privately, after or before the game also. Talk. Communicate back and forth, because if the game is too deadly, and too many characters are dying, and it's just this endless death march into the dungeons, and it's not fun, tell your GM that. They'll most likely be a little disappointed or a little surprised, but they'll normally respond if they like you and say, okay, that's fair, I'll try to tone it down. Or, yeah, I'm sorry. Here, I'll tell you what you do. I'll give you a level 2 magic scroll for your next magic user. They come with it automatically. Their master like them. Just as a little sorry, this should help you survive a little more. There are things you can do. Communicate. Because if the game ultimately isn't fun, if the DM, GM, referee is making bad rulings, leave the game if they're not responsive to your input. But also keep in mind it is their table, so respect their rulings. It's a dialogue. It's a back and forth. Just be mindful of that. So with that, I'm going to ignore everything I just said and cite page 314 of Dungeon Crawl Classics, the greatest RPG perhaps ever created. I, Joseph Goodman, author of this manuscript, and, as ye suppose to be a judge, I admonish thee thus. The judge is always right. Let the rules bend to you, not the other way around. Always roll the dice in public. Let the dice fall where they may, as the saying goes. The players will learn to fear as they trust in the objectivity of your combat encounters. Let the characters die if the dice so dictates it. Nothing is as precious as a PC's life when it can be taken away. And nothing is so unchallenging as a game where the players know the judge will not kill their characters. The DCC RPG is designed for high character death rates. Let this be true in your game as well. Achieving 5th level in the DCC RPG is a true accomplishment. Fear no rule. I know you will homebrew this game. I trust it will remain recognizable, but different from as I conceived it. Such as it should be. A many thanks to all my Ko-Fi sponsors, all of which do not exist currently. You're all truly wonderful. Remember to like and subscribe and stuff. I'm told that helps. With that, I'll see you all in the next video. It's been a good one. I've been Sideshow Sam. Bye.